"All right," Frank said, picking up a marker and pointing to the whiteboard. After a hearty breakfast of pancakes and sausages, served up by their Aunt Gertrude, he and Joe had climbed up to the tree house their dad had built them in their wooded backyard to go over what they knew about Lucy's disappearance. "Let's talk about the six W's." The six W's were something their dad had taught them. Fenton Hardy was a successful private investigator who often worked with the police department. He said that the key to solving a mystery was to ask yourself six questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Frank wrote who at the top of the whiteboard. "We don't know who yet," Joe said, tapping his chin. "That's what we have to figure out: who stole Dylan's guitar." "I'll just leave a question mark for now," Frank said. Underneath he wrote what. "That's easy," said Joe. "The what is that someone stole Lucy." Frank wrote that in. "The next is when," he said, writing the question on the board. "And I think the answer is during Paul's party. Whoever did this must have taken Lucy when Dylan and his bandmates were inside." "Right," said Joe. "The next question is where," Frank said, writing that on the whiteboard. "It was from Paul's backyard," Joe said. "Right," Frank nodded and wrote that too. He and his brother took in what they'd worked out so far. Who, what, stole Dylan's bass, when during Paul's party, where from Paul's yard. Frank crossed his arms. "The only two left are why and how," he said, writing the words on the whiteboard. The boys were silent for a minute, thinking. "Those are the hardest ones," Joe said finally. "Why would someone at Paul's party want to steal Dylan's guitar? And how did they do it during the party?" Frank didn't know. It didn't make a lot of sense. Maybe one of their classmates wanted to learn to play the guitar, but Frank didn't think anyone from the party would stoop so low as to take someone else's. And besides, who would be bold enough to steal it from Dylan's own backyard? Then he remembered something. Dylan had told them, "There's that Bayport battle of the bands coming up," he said. "Remember?" Joe nodded, his eyes lighting up. "And Dylan said he couldn't play without Lucy." Frank tapped the tip of the marker, thinking this through. "If Crash can play," he said, "that kind of opens up the field for the other bands, right?" Joe nodded again. "It would make it easier for them to win," he reasoned. "And the prize were pretty good, right?" "Uh-huh," Frank said, remembering. Some cash and a weekly gig play at a coffee shop." Joe frowned. "Maybe someone from one of those other bands stole Lucy." Frank thought about that. "Or maybe someone working for one of those other bands," he suggested. "I think that's the only explanation that makes sense." He and Joe looked at each other. "How do we find out who the other bands are?" Joe asked. Frank smiled. "That," he said, "is what the internet is for." The boys rushed down the ladder to their backyard and ran to the house and into their dad's empty study. "Dad," he yelled, "can we use a computer?" "Sure," his father answered, came from upstairs. Frank grabbed the mouse and opened up to his father's homepage. Frank typed in Bayport Battle of the Bands and hit the search button. Here we go, Frank murmured as a link to the Battle of the Bands site came up. He clicked on it and scrolled down. The site listed 5 local bands: Crush, The Mean Wheelies, Abraham Lincoln, Jesus with Accordions, The Rockabys. Any of those sound familiar? Frank asked his brother. He knew Joe listened to the radio more than he did. Joe shook his head. Is there a way to get their contact information? Frank looked over the site. He clicked on a link labeled "For more information," then chuckled as he scrolled down. Check it out, he said, pointing the mouse at contact person. Joe laughed. The site listed the contact person for the Battle of the Bands as Susie Germano, one of their classmates and Little League teammates on the Bayport Bandits was Sissy Speedy Germano. That can be a very common last name, Joe observed. You think they are related? Let's find out tomorrow at baseball practice, said Frank. Maybe Speedy can help us find Lucy.